last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, the KGRA audience, some of the best audience on the planet. Let me paraphrase from my buddy, Commander Cobra. Welcome back to a brand new show, Dark Matters Radio. You know, a couple of things I've been thinking about. Today, as we do this show, is August 26th. Just 1 month ago, I had another birthday, which means I completed another circle around our star. And a week from today is Labor Day, the 2nd. My God, that time is just scooting by. And I read a really interesting article yesterday, as a matter of fact, about why so many people get a little sad and depressed during the month of August. Any ideas? Any idea what might be the cause? No, my wife's in the background saying, school starts. No, actually, that's not it. It's the realization that summer is fast on its way out. And that's true. But out here in sunny Southern California, the land of high taxes and a crazy governor, we usually keep some nice weather at least up until January. Not to make the rest of the country feel bad, but that's a fact. Now, tonight, we've got a very special show. One of my favorite guests is making a return appearance. Dr. John Brandenberg's got a brand new book out called Cosmic Awakening. We're going to be talking about that. I've been reading the thing. I'm almost to the very end. And I got to say that there are some very interesting things in there that I'm going to be talking to John about. And of course, as always, my two co-hosts, Mr. Mark Center and Mr. Gary Cassell. Gentlemen, welcome. Welcome back to the show. And there's Dr. John Brandenberg. John, I'm 20 pages from the end of the book. 20 pages.
Oh, my God.
I think I got a pretty firm grasp on this. But anyway, how you guys doing? Mark, how's things been happening, pal?
Hey, it's going okay. I've been wading through this book right here.
There you go.
I've been wading through that. I don't have John's yet because it hasn't been released, but I will read it. And, you know, if you want to talk about green orbs and his claims about Roswell that John might not even know yet, I will share this, though, folks. If you want to see the latest on that book, go to Newsmax on YouTube and go through their videos, and you will find probably 15 different clips of him talking in one mini documentary. I'm not going to say it's interesting. I'm not going to say it's horseshit. Go check it out for yourself.
Okay.
But you're
Gary, how
not
about you, buddy?
Shit.
I am.
Oh, you know me. I'm just sitting here rocking out to some music right now, and you keep talking.
Yeah, well, you know, that's the way it goes, buddy. You do a radio show,
see.
you do a radio show.
I see the show doesn't require a rocket scientist, but tonight we have one.
Hey, gotta
my good buddy
gotta listen
John.
to Layla by Derek and the Dominoes there, Jerry.
Yeah. I don't mind what he calls me, Jerry.
That's the great theme from my book.
Okay, well, guys, let's get started.
All right.
John, there hasn't been an incredible amount of chatter out in the wild, if you will, about UFOs. We are unfortunately in the middle of political madness, okay? And I gotta say, and my wife has been cautioning me, I've been watching and following a lot of political horse shit, and it's been playing on my mind. I'm suffering from political PTSD, I think. But what about you? Have you been hearing any recent tidbits from the UFO UAP field?
I did hear one strange story I got to share with you, and it's so crazy, I think it must be true. Here it is. As I discuss in the book, there are basically three alien types. I mean, it's an oversimplification. The universe is a complex place, just like the Earth, but there are basically three genotypes out there. Apparently, there's the Greys, the little short scum of the galaxy. And then there's the lizard men. And then there's people who look, or we look just like them, just like in Star Trek, where they were always encountering people who are basically looked and behaved like human beings. I mean, Spock's father was Vulcan and his mother was human. It was that. Okay, so here's the story I heard like 3 weeks ago. And you guys can chime in if you've heard anything similar. These two, what we call Pleiadian women who look basically just like us, people from the Pleiades, they're out at Site 51 for some kind of technological exchange. You know, Site 51's out there in the desert, surrounded by all this razor wire. And they can see the lights of Las Vegas over the mountains every night. And apparently, these two women got restless and they said, we want to go to Vegas. So they told their military hosts, you know, look, you got to get us some Earth Women clothes and let us go to Vegas for a day or so. So after a while, they let them do it. And these Pleiadian people, apparently you walk right past one on the street, you wouldn't know it. And so they went and played the slots and won big at the crap tables. So then they
wait a
minute.
Wait.
I know. It's just a crazy story.
Several things I got to throw at you.
Sure.
Number one, the Pleiadians. Okay.
Pleiadians.
Now the Pleiadian
right.
star cluster is too young to have established sentient life, according to astronomers going back 25, 30 years. People have been talking about.
You are correct, sir. You are correct.
I am the Don.
The folklore. You are the Don here. Don Necker. I pledge my fealty. Anyway, Don, the folklore is that the people who say they're from the Pleiades now, they were originally on some planet in the constellation Lyra, which is the harp. You know, the lyre in the Bible, it's the harp.
Yes.
And it's what Spock would always play on Star Trek. Whenever he was trying to relax, he'd play this harp thing. Okay, so they started out there and they got in a fight with the lizard men, these reptilian people from the constellation Draco, which is right next door to the constellation of the harp. They got driven out. You can imagine what that was like. Think Battlestar Galactica, the original series where they had to abandon their planets. And apparently they went to the Pleiades because it's bright and shiny, and they found some planetary systems that were older around the Pleiades and settled there. And that's their turf now. So that is the story that is kind of collected from various sources. It's what you call rumint in military intelligence. You collect a bunch of rumors and you find out which ones kind of seem to line up and attach them a certain level of credibility. And that's the story. Now, if you want to know what a person from the constellation Lyra looks like, watch the movie Moon Pilot by Walt Disney from 1962. Tom Tyrone plays an astronaut. He's supposed to do the loop-de-loop around the moon. That's his scheduled mission. He's approached by this auburn-haired, brown-eyed woman, really cute, who says, your radiation protection on your capsule is inadequate. You got to coat your capsule with this. Otherwise, you'll die out there. So this is a Walt Disney movie. It's a comedy, science fiction comedy. And they end up getting married and have children together. And she looks like any human being, and that's in Walt Disney.
Okay, now this business about the lizard people. Now this reminds me of something that we, as UFO Magazine,
yes,
were involved in. Magazine began in 1986. Okay, now
the 80s.
During the first 3 issues, Vicky published an issue about what might have happened had an asteroid not struck the Earth 65 million years ago, which in essence wiped out the dinosaurs. There was one species of dinosaur, and that's what this issue was devoted to, that had it not have been curtailed, might have very easily become sentient. Now, there's been some suspicion that some of those, in fact, may have survived. Okay. As a matter of fact, some species of dinosaur may have survived up until, the last, and this is hard to believe, but maybe 10,000 years. And this was one strain that did. Now, they went underground. Now, for years, going back to when I entered the field professionally, there have been stories over those decades of people encountering these things. Now, exactly who they are, where they came from is up for grabs, but that some of those, in fact, reside right here on Earth. Would this be the same species as you're talking about? Or might these so-called Draco reptilians, whatever.
Repto-avians. It turns out the dinosaurs, actually, a lot of them had feathers. So these were little miniature Tyrannosaurus rexes that actually started standing more and more upright, getting bigger and bigger brains. I mean, they could track it in the fossil record.
Right.
It could be, they could be indigenous to this planet and survivors, or these other people could be also in outer space. What happened on Earth could obviously happen someplace else. The laws of physics are the same everywhere, pretty much in the universe. And so that's a very interesting question, and I don't know. However, remember in Star Trek, he encountered a group called the Gorn, and they were extremely unpleasant. And they looked like intelligent dinosaurs.
Yes, right. Well,
So,
okay. Now to get back to your
yes,
story about Pleiadian visitors here, a couple
yes.
of females. Where did this story originate from, John? Because whenever you
I
hear
just was, I
a
was,
story,
you
a
know,
story like that, okay, as an ex-investigator, criminal investigator, I like to get to the genesis. Where did this come from? Can you say where this came from? And if you trust the source, do you give any credibility to it?
I actually talked to a number of people. I used to work in DC, and so I still have some contacts there that I talk to occasionally
Do you think these
in the
guys
military.
sometimes might gaslight you?
Oh, of course. Of course. I mean, yeah, the story to me sounds real because I know what people would from another planet would feel like cooped up on a desert installation in Site 51. They'd get stir crazy after a while, especially some females. And they want to go see Vegas. And to me, it sounds crazy enough to be true, but I do not know how much credibility to attach to it. I only heard it from one
How do they
person.
feel? How do these ladies feel about earth libations?
Well, the reports are that we get
Harvey
along just fine.
Wallbanger, Long Island iced tea.
Yes, I will tell you of one conversation I had in Washington, D.C. in 1992. I was working in a classified facility with very serious professionals, and it was a kind of a think tank run by the DOD. I was there as kind of a contractor, consultant. I'm sitting in my office. They gave me an office. I'm sitting there working on a classified problem. This guy walks into my office suddenly, and this guy is a serious professional. I've worked there for 6 months, and everybody I know he's highly regarded. Has been there for a long time. And people would talk to me because of my interest in Mars. They were aware of my work on a dead civilization on Mars. So he suddenly tells me, he says, "John, I've been talking to some people," he says, "and they are very concerned because they're human, they're aliens down here that look just like human beings and act just like human beings, and we can't tell them from terrestrials. Have you got any ideas?" And I'm just, you know, I'm just looking at some classified report, and I just look at him, and I'd seen the movie, I just watched the movie Terminator again, where they use sniffer dogs. So I said, "Well, why don't you use canine units? Maybe they'll be able to tell the difference between a human being from Earth and what's apparently a human being from
Well,
someplace
what
out in
about blood
space."
chemistry? Blood chemistry would certainly
Oh,
seem.
their blood chemistry is the same as ours. Apparently, you can take a mouth swab on these people. Our genes are pretty much the same.
Yeah, but
They're
if they're
within the
conceived
genetic range, a range of genetic material on Earth.
and born outside the star system, there would be, I think, some
Sure.
type of blood gases, something would show up as different.
Well, it turns out hemoglobin. By the way, if you this is a marvelous thing. If you look at the structure of chlorophyll in plants, it's a chemical. But at the center of that chemical is a magnesium atom with 4 bonds to it, and then a bunch of organic, hydrogens and oxygens and carbons around it. Then if you look at a molecule of hemoglobin, they look almost the same, except the hemoglobin has iron in it instead of magnesium. So these are very, very similar chemicals. And apparently they're found, I would not be surprised if they're found everywhere in the universe.
Well, what do
Chlorophyll
you think
and
a
hemoglobin.
sniffer do you think a sniffer dog could detect on for the sake of this discussion,
Yeah.
a visitor as opposed to any other Earth person?
Well, as you know, dogs, their sense of smell is probably one of their most important organs. In addition to hearing, they do have pretty good eyes, but they rely a lot on their hearing and their nose.
Olfactory,
And so they they can sniff out people who have cancer. Now, they have dogs who can smell the abnormal molecules that are associated with cancer. So, but I told this to this guy, and he gets this big smile on his face. He leaves the room, and I think this is like a Walt Disney comedy movie, I thought. And then a week later, he comes back into my office, same guy, and says, "John, I told your idea to the guys I've been talking to, and they're really happy with the idea, and they're going to try it." So I'm aware that there was groups in the intel community that were concerned about very, very basically human beings who are extraterrestrial. And apparently, if you take a mouth swab on them, their genetic material lies close enough to humans that it doesn't attract attention.
Mark,
And
you
this
are
means,
Gary.
well, think of it this way. What's that?
No, I was
No, he's
telling
asking,
Mark
he's asking
and
if we wanted to
Gary if they
intervene.
want to join in here.
So
So
we know that dogs, since like if you smell Dr. Pepper, okay, you smell Dr. Pepper. A dog smells all 23 ingredients individually.
Yes, he does.
So dogs have particulate sensitive noses, and it's the same thing with their taste buds, even though they eat garbage. But the fact is if you have dogs that are trained to smell differences in things, they would smell the difference between a human and an alien if that alien was still humanoid.
Yes.
What your thoughts, Mark?
If you can give a bloodhound a sock from somebody who's an escaped convict, and they can track that through a swamp, then they can tell somebody from another planet. They can make out individuals in the human race.
Yeah.
So
by their scent.
Let's take a for instance. If their blood makeup is very similar to ours, then
Yes.
and this is all conjecture. So I'm wondering what they've done to themselves to keep them from getting venereal disease, keep them from getting cancers, keep them from getting everything that we get since they're so close to us.
That's probably a hazard, especially STDs on this planet. I'm sorry, it's Mark, right? Yeah, Mark.
Yeah.
You're asking me more. I've gone off
that's fine. I'm just
gone
throwing
off the
it
boundary
out there.
of my limited piece of knowledge. I will tell you this. People ask me, so they look like us? And I said, no, they predate us. They've been around a lot longer in the stars than we have. We look like them, and that means we're partly the result of shore leave.
Right.
They have been here before. That's even in the Bible. It says
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
Oh
the,
yeah.
the
So
yeah
so I'm
the heroes of the Greek myths were supposedly descendant of godlike beings, and it says in the Bible that these sons of God liked earth women and had children with them, and they were great men about whom many legends are written. That's in the Bible.
right.
And so
The
then you go to the Greek mythology, Zeus running, taking shore leave on Earth down from Mount Olympus, and Perseus, Theseus, Hercules, all these guys were supposedly half god.
right. And Don and I talk about the Anunnaki quite a bit.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. So yeah.
So I think the Anunnaki were basically just humans from other stars. Why they are there? How come the human race is super terrestrial? I don't know. They alluded to that in Star Trek. That was one of the things that was a recurring theme, in addition to the Prime Directive, was the fact that there were very human aliens out there in the stars, and this was not explained. No one had an explanation for it. I mean, the first example is the Vulcans, who were friendly, and then of course the Romulans and the Klingons, who weren't so friendly.
Right.
They were very human too, at least the original series.
Hey John, what's your view, to switch gears here real quick? What's your view on the Boeing spacecraft and all this crap that's going on? You think they launched a little too soon?
Oh, what a catastrophe!
Yeah.
Run a god and everybody to go up there, strand two astronauts. This is like
Well,
a
I gotta pop in here very quickly about that, about Boeing. The Boeing Corporation, unfortunately, is now suffused with the DEI horseshit.
How dare
Okay.
you?
I know. How dare you?
And being
Please
infused
keep going.
with the DEI horseshit, okay, it has dramatically screwed up their corporation, their work,
Yes.
their aircraft, doors
Yep.
flying off, wheels coming loose. I mean, and now a couple of astronauts stranded in orbit because their spacecraft was screwed up. That's my take on it.
And
DEI.
evidently Musk is going to have to go up there to get them, right?
Exactly.
Right. And then you have Tractor Supply,
Yeah.
Bud Light, Disney. When are we going to learn? Please, Anunnaki, come down and save us.
Me and my iced teas salute you.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Green Orbs, you got a really good point. Boeing used to be a fine company.
Absolutely.
And I blame the three-piece suits with their, increase their profit margins every month, sacrifice quality control. Remember, there was a Boeing quality control inspector committed suicide recently.
Oh yeah.
Supposedly. The worst case of suicide I'd ever seen. I think there were 5 bullets in his head.
Allegedly.
That's a record for a suicide. It's just a scandal. That project, they were given a bigger budget, and they still did a cost overrun, and took too long. And the Dragon has been flying for 2 years up to the station with people on it, and Boeing has just now finally got its shit in one sock so it could fly something, and that failed. So that just says that company, that company is I will tell you a quick conversation I had at a dinner. It was actually a dinner at a conference on UAPs down in Huntsville. And one of the guys at my table, it's the banquet, he's got this badge that says Boeing. And I said, well, you guys are prime contractors on the SLS, the Space Launch System. I said, that thing, you were supposed to just take the shuttle parts and plug them together like Lego toys, build us a new rocket. And you guys are way over budget and way behind schedule. And it was supposed to be something simple. And you know what he did? He just grinned. He says, well, the meter's running. He says, my bosses are happy. And I told him, I said, if you keep up that attitude, Elon Musk is going to eat your lunch.
Yep.
And
no, we just had a very interesting question here.
yes,
Valiant Thor. Okay. This is from Cathex, I believe it's pronounced. I'm extremely skeptical of the old chestnut Valiant Thor. What's your take on it? Well, now this is a story that goes back decades. Allegedly, Valiant Thor was a visitor that came down to Earth and was taken to the Pentagon to discuss outer space stuff. Okay. Aliens, ships, faster than light travel, all this kind of stuff. I got to tell you, Cathex, I've always been extremely skeptical of that myself. John,
yes.
What about you?
Oh, I'm extremely skeptical. It does make a great story. Was this Adamski who actually pushed this thing?
I was trying.
That was a difference.
I don't know if it was, but it was right at the same time as we're flying to Venus.
Right.
We're flying
right.
to, yeah. Well, Venus is at the time, Venus they thought was a planet covered with jungle and a tropical paradise with dancing girls and stuff like this. And then they found out it was just a hellish desert where molten lead can exist on the surface. So now what I do believe is the report that Eisenhower in 1953,
Gerald Light letter you're referring to.
Yeah, and that he met with some very humanoid aliens who could do marvelous things at Edwards Air Force Base. They asked us to give up our nuclear weapons. By this time, the Russians had them. So Eisenhower politely declined this request. And, but apparently the conversations continued because very humanoid aliens have actually been a part of the UFO lore since its beginning.
Well, there's a tie-in there, John, with the many worlds theory.
Yes, there is.
Yes, during that period of time, not only the United States but the Soviet Union were conducting nuclear detonations multiple times monthly. Okay.
Yes.
And this is when the contactee movement really got its start. And what was the contactee mantra? We've got to do away with our nuclear weapons. Okay. Now the FBI then under J. Edgar Hoover sat up, took notice of this, suspected communist infiltration, okay, among these contactees, and they were all investigated for communist tie-in. But there's another possibility, and this is that some of those visitors came not from off-world, but through dimensional portals. And the atomic testing was disturbing, if you will, the status quo.
As a physicist, I find that a very credible. I believe that there are many other dimensions. Like it's just like we're surrounded by radio signals, and if you don't have the right radio, you can't pick them up. But then if you do, you can pick up all the different channels, hundreds of different channels around us. And I believe the dimensions are the same way. And yeah, if you set off a nuclear weapon, I heard when I was working at Livermore, which is nuclear weapons lab, that something like 10% of the material in a nuclear weapon ends up moving at close to the speed of light when it goes off. So that's going to really shake up things. And if there are nearby dimensions, some of that blast is going to spill over. And so it would not seem unreasonable at all.
What happens, because you're here and you don't play one on TV, and I won't get into that show that Jerry Gary loves. What would you say? What happens when you explode a nuke in space? What process goes on up there?
Well, you create a big EMP pulse that can be picked up, and my own, and I can't prove this, but one of my own beliefs is that because of what's called quantum entanglement, where you can get photons communicating across a room faster than light, you measure the polarization on one photon, and then you automatically know what it is on the other side of the room faster than light, and they all match. So I think that when you set off a nuclear weapon, even on Earth, but also in space especially, that signals go out that are faster than light, and they alert the surrounding stars that we have nuclear weapons. And that may not be a bad thing considering some of the people we've run into out there.
Right.
Well,
so
the Pentagon back in 1958, 59, which ultimately this plan was to send a message to the Soviet Union, but cooler heads prevailed. We were going to send a nuclear-tipped ICBM to the moon and set off an atomic explosion
blow up
on the lunar surface.
Well, you can imagine all the moon rocks that would be falling on the Earth for the next couple of weeks.
And what the hell would the aliens on the rear of the moon have to say about that?
John Lear.
That's
John
even
Lear.
better. John, yeah. Well, hey, there's Jim Greer and John Lear. I'll take John Lear any day.
All right.
There you go. I'm
John
a poet,
unfortunately left the building.
So if we talk about the EMPs, granted, when they blew up when they did those tests, not underground, but when they did them in the desert and such, we didn't have a lot of things.
Space,
they
finally put out,
So we didn't have a lot of things that would be affected evidently by EMP back then, but was an EMP happening back in the 40s as it would happen from space to come down here?
Sure. Yes.
So we just didn't have technology that was adversely affected to a great extent back then.
No. Well, basically vacuum tube technologies that
right.
They would survive just fine. The nuclear EMP. I'm sure they picked it up, they detected it, but they just didn't consider it that important. They were more worried about gamma rays and things like that. And what's interesting, by the way, is that they set off the Trinity device in New Mexico near Alamogordo. The fallout pattern from that was an open air test, went all the way to Roswell, and it was a plutonium bomb. That means the soil around, and an atomic bomb, especially in those days, only half the fuel burned up. The rest of the plutonium is vaporized. So that means there was the prevailing winds carried a swath of that payload, that fallout, to Roswell, meaning the soil around Roswell had gamma ray emissions from plutonium, which is how you tell plutonium from a distance. It makes a lot of gamma rays, as opposed to uranium, which is more stable. And so, they made a bomb out of two different things. The first bomb was made out of enriched uranium. They were so confident that it would work, they just built it and then they dropped it. But they tested the plutonium bomb that required the spherical implosion. They tested that one at Alamogordo to make sure it would work, and of course it worked great. But this left a swath of fallout that they could detect even in those days all the way to Roswell. Don't eat the snow, please, after the nuclear test.
Right.
It was a war. I mean, we were getting ready to lose maybe 1 million men to invade Japan. So they weren't worried about the small stuff in those days. And so as it turns out, then they parked all of our nuclear weapons, all 5 of them. They were the same type as they dropped on Nagasaki using plutonium. They parked them all at Roswell Army Air Base. I found that out because they had a reunion of all of the officers surviving in like 1992 called Reminiscences of Roswell. They got them all together.
Only 5 weapons, John? Only 5?
Only 5. That was the entire nuclear weapons stockpile.
I had heard at one point, and obviously this must have been wrong, that we had 10 or 11 devices.
I mean, once the Cold War started going, they started making nuclear weapons as fast as they could. And plutonium is easy to make, but hard to use. So they would have made plutonium bombs. If you have a nuclear reactor, you can make plutonium easy. You could separate it chemically from the spent fuel rods. Enriched uranium, that takes a lot more hardware to do that. So what they did was, but if it was 4 or 5, I heard at the Roswell reminiscences from several of the officers there that they had 5. But that was in June of, that was July of 1947. They could have had a lot more. They could have doubled that amount in a couple months if they wanted to. Because they were developing.
Could have been some else, right? There could have been some at Wright-Patterson or something. I mean, there could have been some elsewhere.
Okay, sure. But the genius of keeping them at Roswell is no one can detect. They're very difficult to detect because you've got what's called high signal
the residual radiation.
High signal to noise.
Right.
There's so much plutonium in the ground that finding big lumps of plutonium that are in concrete bunkers underground is very difficult.
Right.
So that means, let's just say you're an alien from outer space and you're trying to case the place. They're trying to case it. See what we got. They want to know how many guns we got in the house.
Right.
Before they try and break in. You got to also remember the mental landscape was the U.S. government had just gone through World War II. They'd gone through Pearl Harbor. They'd gone through the Battle of the Bulge, which were failures of intelligence. I mean, we had a lot of intelligence victories, but those were 2 failures because we ignored warning signs that something was brewing.
Right.
So then we got this big UFO surge of sightings in late June. up until July 8th, according to Philip Corso, the U.S. government went into a frenzy because they were afraid of an invasion from outer space, a war of the worlds scenario. They didn't know what they were dealing with. They knew that these people, if they're looking at our weapons capabilities, our most powerful weapons are stored at Roswell, and the aliens are interested in them. That means they could be contemplating an invasion. We don't know how many forces they have out there. They could just have a few probes. They could have legions. Who knows? So,
We have
according to
long
Philip
supply
Corso,
lines.
long supply lines. I know. I like that. That's a very
So,
good
so
concept.
before we
But
break,
anyway, yeah.
before we break, I know we're going to go to your upcoming book, which a lot of this ties in with this.
Yeah.
There's that rumor, and the reason I'm asking you this to close us out is we've been talking about bombs and in space and yada yada yada. So, do you have anything to say about the rumor that the face on Mars was defaced by an atomic explosion, and how, if that was true, John, how would that
Yes.
look on the face on Mars if they were to do that? Do you think that it would look the way it looks in the subsequent photos, or do you think that a nuclear bomb dropped on something like that would result in something that looks quite a bit different?
My own hypothesis, which I've got a lot of backing for, a lot of data supporting it, is there was a thermonuclear holocaust on Mars. It looks like it was technological, with bombs as big as the Empire State Building dropped from space to devastate the planet. The face on Mars, you must understand, is actually rather flat. It's about
Right.
400 meters high, but it's about a kilometer, 2 kilometers across. And so the shock wave and the flash burn from the bomb, which went off, one of them went off near the face on Mars, would have affected one side of the face more than others in terms of blast and
Right.
perhaps
But
melting.
I'm talking about the timeline here. The timeline was in
Oh, the
76.
timeline.
Wait, in 1976, I think it was, we get our first photos, and then after Hoagland and all that stuff, sometime in the, I can't remember, the 90s, then they took new photos of it, and it looked completely different. And they were saying, "Oh, that's because they blew it up."
That actually,
That's what I'm talking about.
that was a masterpiece of psyops. What they did,
Right. But let's say they did that, John. Let's say with what you know, if they would have done that, what do you think it would have looked like in the aftermath if that actually did happen in the 90s, let's say?
Oh, well, I mean, if in the 90s, oh no, I don't think there was any recent nuclear.
Right, but what if? What do you think it would have made that?
This stuff on Mars happened before the dinosaurs on Earth, is my best estimate.
But
yeah, but I'm sorry.
But again, the rumor is, by some people, flat earthers, whatever, they say that it was defaced by some sort of an explosion. In your experience, what would that have looked like if that would have happened?
Well, it would look like a blast wave, but a blast wave, and you've seen what nuclear test blast waves look like.
Yeah.
So it turns out the front part of the target, if it's sort of streamlined, doesn't have much damage. It's the lee side, believe it or not, because it triggers all this turbulence.
Yeah.
And the turbulence some of the turbulence is more powerful than the original wave. And that really tears things up. So you actually would have expected slightly more damage on the side of the face that was away from the blast than there was facing it, if it was a fairly flat object.
And
you guys know that prior to the United States entry into the Second World War, roughly 1937 or so, a Japanese astronomer by the name of Sehiki, okay, observed on Mars, he was a Mars observer,
Sure.
a tremendous explosive event on Mars, which caused, now, by the way, this was reported by Donald Kehoe, okay,
Yes.
the director of Nightcap,
all right.
in one of his books. This caused a tremendous explosion and then what Kehoe described as a bluing, the color blue of
Yes.
the entire Martian surface. Are you familiar with that, John?
I didn't know about the bluing, but it could have been a volcano doing a big eruption, putting out a lot of water vapor. And the Mars has blue skies anyway. I hate to break it to you. I don't want you guys to start tearing off your clothes and running down the street screaming. No, Mars has blue skies because if you look at the Hubble pictures, you see a blue haze around.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Because those Hubble pictures are not handled by JPL. They got their own. They got the Space Institute handles it. Yeah. Oh yes. So JPL. Now you'll notice the recent videos, like they had the thing of the parachute opening from one of their probes. They were looking. Camera was looking up. The sky was blue. It's blue because that's the color of colorless gas when it's illuminated by sunlight. Oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, argon, they all give you a blue sky.
But it's the reflection.
And there's a hell of a lot more water on Mars
Absolutely.
than JPL or anybody else has been talking about, isn't there?
Oh God. Well, they were very embarrassed to discover that the northern polar cap was like 3 miles thick and it was made of water. They kept insisting it was all dry ice for many years. You guys, they've been engaging in a Mars cover-up in addition to a UFO cover-up.
Why, John? Why?
If you find life on Mars, then it's in the stars. If it's in the stars, then these UFOs, it's the Mars bone is connected to the UFO bone, and the UFO bone is connected to the head bone of this government. I have a screenplay where they say, well, if the Mars bone goes.
One last explosion question before we got to go. In what ways would an explosion on Mars or even the moon, but let's take the ones we've all seen on video, right, from the 40s and such. How would that look differently on Mars or the moon in that environment? How would it fit? Would it visually look?
I think I have actually spent some time thinking about that, and I found an interesting video. It was commandos in World War II setting off some high explosives north of the Arctic Circle. They're blowing up some German installation on Spitsbergen or something, and the shockwave it was entirely visible and moved slow, and it knocked the guy down, but it just kept on going. And so I think on Mars, shockwaves will just, keep, we only see them. Don, you know what I'm talking about, watching the shockwaves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, C4. Composition C4 has a very noticeable shockwave.
And the reason we see the shockwave is because there's this decompression zone right behind the shockwave. The air is compressed in the shockwave, and then it's actually thinner and colder behind the shockwave, so it condenses all the water vapor. So that's why. So I think on Mars as a science fiction writer, and I put it in my science fiction novel, the shock waves on Mars just keep going miles for miles. You can't, if you're standing there in your spacesuit. One of the heroines is standing there in her spacesuit and feels the shockwave just brush past her and watches it go for miles. She's on Mars with Marines.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Wow.
It's the gift that keeps on going. So on the moon, it'd be just like a bright flash. But on Mars, because it has a trace of an atmosphere, you'd see a nice shock wave going on and on, I think.
Right. Okay. Well, Don, I think it's almost break time.
I sent a note earlier to our producer.
And she said 1 minute, a minute ago.
Yeah. Really? A minute ago?
We're just trying to...
Wait a minute.
It says it right there. Right there.
Okay. All right.
I got an idea. Let's argue all the way up to break.
Yeah. Well, we're there.
Hey,
we're
you
at
guys...
break. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, John's new book, Cosmic Awakening.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Stick around. Gang. And we are back. And my guest is not.
But
Brandenburg has accidentally hit the X button.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. See, it's a lot. I like having John on because those sorts of questions, I have nobody to ask. I mean, Don will pontificate as long as the quarter will last, but Don didn't even play roles on TV, right?
No, but I am the Don. Okay.
That's true. That's
just
true.
like Donna was the Donna on
That's
Suits. Right. Oh, speaking of, John, this is a heck of a question. Back in the about 2015,
speaking of the devil,
2015, 2016, on AMC, okay, there was a television series that ran for 4 years called Preacher. All right. Dominic Cooper and Ruth Negga were the stars of it. And I can't think of the guy's name that played the Irish vampire. But this show was one of the most quirky and fun. Okay. I'll tell you up front, fun. Well, it ran for until about 2019 or so, and it went off the air. Well, recently, Netflix popped it up, and I came across it, and I said, hey, I got to watch this again. So I've been watching it, and I had forgotten a lot of plot points and stuff in there. But the town that this guy came from, all right, the town was a place called Anvil, Texas. This guy is a Texas preacher, all right? But he used to be a bad guy, all right? A robber. He did some shootings, that kind of stuff. But just the other night in one of the episodes, the whole town blew up. And it blew up because of a methane reactor. Nuclear reactor. The guy that was supposed to be monitoring the nuclear reactor had one of the ladies come over from a community brothel there, and he wasn't paying attention. Yeah, they were consulting. All right. And
are they in Congress?
Yeah, the thing popped over the line, and the whole damn town blew up in a nuclear cloud. Now, John, my question: could you run a reactor of some type with methane? Now, the reason where the methane came from, they have a lot of cattle there. Okay, raising cattle and cattle excrement, what have you. in some quarters, we won't do it here.
Sure,
But in some quarters,
sure.
that would be called bullshit. But we're not gonna call it that. We're gonna call it excrement. But could that actually fire up some kind of reactor?
Oh, sure. Oh, they had a big they used a lot of that gas, like in India, to make power, because they have a lot of cows, and they're sacred, but they got to put them to work anyway. So anyway, so they collect it. They call it gobar gas, and every once in a while something goes wrong. Somebody's smoking in the wrong place. Somebody steps outside to have a cigarette. Boom! The whole damn thing slows up, and it's the story of the human race in miniature.
Yeah, they don't have many McDonald's over there, though, do they? In India?
No, they
they
do.
don't.
They just don't sell that. But yes, they do. We both know a guy who spent time there who I shall not name. So that was talked about. It's just not beef. Whatever it is, I don't know, but it's not
They
beef.
call it the McSacred cow.
Hey, Don, since we're in the new hour here, could you please, sir, introduce the upcoming book by Mr. Brandenberg so we can all get on the same page here?
Well, not too awful long ago, Dr. Brandenberg called me up and he said, Don, my new book is coming out. He said, I'm going to send you a copy of it, and it's going to blow the top off the Roswell thing. And I said, well, shoot, John, that sounds like a heck of a deal. So he sent it to me, and I began reading it. And there are some very interesting things in this book, Cosmic Awakening, all right, that Dr. Brandenberg pointed out. One of them is what, in fact, may have caused the craft to come down. Now, John and I have talked about this years past, about what might have happened. Mark and I have talked about this, what may have happened. And in a recent paper that I wrote on disclosure, I speculated on what may be some of the reasons that a number of these craft reportedly came down. But,
yes,
John, let's get back to Cosmic Awakening. What was it that how did you arrive at your conclusions about this? Because it's fascinating. And this also will highlight, at the time, we're talking 1947, of some very high technology that the United States Army Air Forces were utilizing in the war in Europe and the Pacific that a lot of people may not be aware of.
That's right. Okay. Remember June, July time frame, early July of 1947. I mean, they're coming up on the anniversary, the second anniversary of the end of World War II. 75 million human beings got killed, a lot of them in death camps, horrifically. We lost close to 500,000 men in World War II. So, I mean, all people can think of is trying to get home, enjoy a good 4th of July. It's apparently we're talking the early AM of 4th of July. Now, everybody's seeing UFOs all over the country. According to Philip Corso, the government freaked out completely. It knew they were from outer space. They're scoping our most powerful weapon systems. They don't know what scenario they're going to deal with.
And they're dealing with incursions in many sensitive areas in the United States, aren't they? nuclear
are.
power plants, etc.
Right. So the U.S. government reacts very forcefully to this and concentrates its security forces in the New Mexico area because of White Sands, where they're testing V2s and who knows what else.
Advanced radar.
So advanced radars, etc. So during the day they had the P-80 Shooting Star jet fighter, our first operational jet fighter, but it couldn't fly at night. I mean, they couldn't figure radars sets in those days were big and bulky. And the plane was, let's say it was airworthy, but you wouldn't want to fly one through a thunderstorm. You might get a flame out of one of the engines and ruin your whole day. So very violent thunderstorms in New Mexico, especially that time of year. So what do they have up patrolling at night over Roswell? They're trying to protect the nuclear weapons stockpile. They have the P-61 Black Widow, which was the operational night fighter. It was just a 2-engine propeller plane, was a really good bird. It had 300 kills during World War II. They only lost one of them in combat. They had veteran crews from World War II. They, interestingly enough, had pulled in all the night fighter squadrons from Japan and Europe to the United States in May of 47. It's as if they knew the UFO surge was coming, probably because of the ghost rocket thing in the Scandinavian countries. So they got that up patrolling the sky. It's got a radar in the nose. It's got a fiberglass nose, so the radar beams go right through it. It's got a scanning dish in the there, but the pilots, the crew on these, they got 3 guys on the crew. One's a gunner, one's a pilot, one's a radar operator, and it's a really rugged plane. They flew it through thunderstorms to find out how bad things were in thunderstorms. It's called Project Thunderstorm. That was their plane to do the test bed. But it's the only night fighter we have that's all weather.
And it was very heavily armed.
They were they had 4 20-millimeter cannons in the base of the fuselage. They had 4 50 calibers in a robotic turret, similar to the ones on the B-29 on the roof. And they had the barrels positioned so it wouldn't blind the pilot. He could keep his night vision when he was firing. And the 8 tracer round streams would converge like at 400 yards ahead of the plane. So they're flying around at night, and what they would do, what they had learned to do from World War II, because the Japanese and the German night fighters, which were their main prey, had radar detectors on their planes, so they could tell when the American night fighters were closing in on them, or the British. So the people, the Black Widows, the veteran crews, they'd switch off their radar when they got about 5 miles close to and they would do the rest of the intercept visually using night binoculars. And they would wear red goggles all day before they would go up for the night patrols to keep their night vision very acute. And so these guys, apparently, it's World War II veteran crew, snuck up on 2 UFOs who are flying low and slow near Roswell Army Air Base because there's so much radiation from the fallout on the ground. You have to have 2 craft. This is just straight physics with sensitive gamma ray detectors. One of them is going to give you the noise floor. The other one is going to give you the difference from the noise floor to try and figure out where the nuclear weapons are stored, how many of there are. They bushwhacked them. Now, they may have lost some planes that night too. I don't know. But the report was that it was a Black Widow that got these 2 craft. It produced 2. One of them they shot down. It exploded in midair, produced 2 fields of wreckage near Corona, north of Roswell. The other one was just badly damaged and limped away and got as far as near Socorro, place called the Plains of San Augustine, where they have the big, very large array of radio telescopes. It was in the movie Contact. And it went down there. And as soon as it went down there, roughly the morning of 4th of July of Independence Day, let's call it Independence Day, the Army arrived in trucks, 2.5 trucks, all these troops, and this red-haired colonel with leather lungs, and a bunch of people had seen at dawn's early light this silver disc. It had a big hole in it, and it was full of dead aliens, and there were dead aliens on the ground outside it. It had a big hole in it, and so it had a rough night, and the troops took over this place. There were a bunch of archaeologists who were out there. There were some campers. There was an irrigation inspector. The red-haired colonel lined them all up and screamed at them. He said, if you guys say anything about this, we'll kill you, and we'll kill your families too. The only time I've ever heard of a threat like that being told to people was remember when we captured a U-boat in the middle of the Atlantic in about 1944? They captured a U-boat intact before it, and they lined up all the crew members who were part of that operation, told them, if you tell a soul, because we've just gotten all the code books, all the Enigma decoding gear from this U-boat, if you tell anybody that we've captured this, we'll kill you and we'll kill your families too. That's what the Navy told the sailors on board that ship. It was a war. Thousands of men are getting killed every day. So anyway, so that same wartime mentality apparently had extended into the thing. Now, 4 days later, Max Brazel finds the field of wreckage. Bunch of wreckage. Thing exploded in midair. He went and told the sheriff. Sheriff told the air base. The air base, because of compartmentalized secrecy, was completely out of the loop on this thing. They didn't know anyone was worried about UFOs from outer space. They just called up the newspaper and said, we got one. And then very shortly after that, the colonel in charge of the air base got a very angry phone call and got his ass chewed off by a General Ramey down in Texas, his superior. And guess who showed up at Roswell Army Air Base, according to the witnesses I had dinner with several times? The red-haired colonel and his team of GIs. They took over the base. They rounded up all the wreckage they could, and they put it on B-25s and shipped it to Texas. And they also apparently found, in addition to Max Brazel's field of debris, they found a second field of debris with bodies. Some rumors say they found human bodies that had been mutilated in the wreckage. Now, this kind of sets the tone. This is the first time the UFOs, and they were the little short gray guys. And by the way, they look like they're really brainy. It's because their bodies are small and scrawny. Their heads are the same size as ours. Look at the
Space
picture.
nerds.
If you
Gotcha.
look, what? What's
Space
that?
nerds. Gotcha. Space nerds.
Yeah, these people are obviously so much smarter than we are. They crash their ships all the time, just like we do. So now people have said, oh, Brandenburg, you're wrong. There was a bad lightning storm the morning of, the night of before July 4th, before the night of Independence Day. That a lightning bolt knocked down the 2 craft. Lightning bolts hit human aircraft all the time. They just bounce off it. The lightning rides right on the skin of the plane and jumps off. It happens all the time. If you're in a passenger plane and it happens, the worst that'll happen is you spill your coffee. They'll get you some new ones. The electronics is proof to that. The other people said, oh, they got in the radar beams from Roswell. The radar beams in those days were really weak. I mean, you'd think airplanes would crash all the time around Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. No. Are you telling me that people from outer space that have come here from 40 light years away, Zeta Reticuli, don't know how to build a ship that can stand a lightning bolt or a radar beam? And they've been flying around on Earth since 1942, the Foo Fighters. They were experienced with lightning in Earth's atmosphere and radar beams. They've been flying around in World War II. So what does cause things to blow up and blow up in midair or crash land with big holes in them? 20 millimeter cannons or 50 caliber. That'll do it. Ma Deuce. Four Ma Deuce will do that to a craft. I don't care where it's from. And and they picked up this wreckage. None of it looked bulletproof. I mean, sure, they couldn't break it with their fingers, but I know the first thing they did with that was take it to a firing range and fire a 50 caliber bullet through it, and it went through just fine. I've watched several 50s science fiction movies. In one science fiction movie, somebody pulls a gun on an alien and he says, "That can't hurt me, put that away." The guy shoots him. He falls over.
So, John, would
He's
this
bluffing.
redheaded, well, I don't know, was he a colonel or something? Is that what
Yeah,
you
he was
said?
a colonel.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
the guy who's running the air base. What's that?
Was this redheaded colonel, I'm making an assumption here, the same redheaded colonel that supposedly told Frankie Rowe that I'll bring you out into the desert and you'll die?
Yeah, Frankie Rowe was near Socorro. He was a young kid camping. Yeah, same guy apparently.
Well, his
father
manner
was the same.
Okay, and do we have the name of this redheaded colonel?
No, we do not.
And where? And
I mean,
oh, it's fine. And you may or may not be able to tell me this, but where did you get this where did you get this information where there were two ships that were flying slowly together and they both basically crashed at the same time or partially crashed at the same time?
That's just physics of trying to detect
gamma
rays.
Where did the information come from that there were two of them at the same time?
Oh, that's Berlitz and more the Roswell incident. They talked about the two crashes the same time frame. It's there. That's the best description of the state of the craft. That was mostly intact. It was a disc, but it had a big
incidentally, hole. That was the very first
yes.
publication of anything about Roswell since 1947. Charles Berlitz and William Moore.
Right. Yeah. I was unaware, and I'm no expert at this, but I was unaware that the claim is being made that basically they were in tandem flying together, and this went down.
Well, that, by the way, that is only my inference. If you're looking for low intensity, very, very low, a weak gamma ray signal, then you have to fly basically two ships near each other, but far enough apart so they have differing, and all you can do is difference the two signals.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
One of them is established. One establishes the noise floor due to the plutonium in the soil. The other one gives a slightly larger signal because it's closer to where the nuclear weapons are stored. So it was raining then. That means the gamma rays get absorbed by the rain. So means they probably had to fly close to the base to do this.
Okay.
So they're flying fairly close together and they're flying low and slow to try and get a good signal. and it was the perfect storm for the aliens, in a sense, the perfect bad situation. And then these the P-61 Black Widow, by the way, is credited with the very last kill of World War II, before peace was declared, before the armistice was declared. They brought down a Japanese fighter at night, and
so you mentioned that, and I think this is assumption on your part, but you mentioned that you assume that what they did is took some of the larger pieces of the wreckage, or at least a large piece of the wreckage, large enough that they could shoot a 50 cal to test this out.
oh well, I mean, I'm just that's what I would do.
Right, and it makes sense.
I mean, if I was there, I would say, well, give me some of the pieces. I'll take it out of the firing range, and we'll bring up a Ma Deuce and put it on, squeeze off a few shots, see if it goes through it.
Right,
and I'm sure it did.
Is there something that you would be your book is not out yet. Is there something you would be willing to share?
It is out. It is out. Yes.
Oh, okay. So since they can read it and buy it, is there something that you can share to the people who are going to hear this that would really wet the whistle on something extraordinary that hasn't already been shared about this case?
Oh, well, the Roswell was a military clash. It was not just an incident.
Oh, okay.
It was a military clash.
Right. So that's what you're trying to put forth here. Right.
Yeah, it set the tone for the entire UFO cover-up from that moment on. We were basically then in a low-level military conflict with somebody from outer space.
Let's not forget.
Now, you remember.
Let's not forget that after the Roswell event happened, and that was swept under the rug very quickly. Okay.
Yes.
UFO sightings continued on all across the United States. And in 1952, in July and then August, all right.
Yes, basically the anniversary of Roswell.
Washington, D.C. was incursions were made on 3, not 2, but 3 weekends where these objects came in. They overflew through all restricted airspace, the Pentagon, the White House, the Congress.
Yes.
Okay. With impunity, basically, and having dealt with some psychological warfare things in my own military service, they were sending a message. Now,
they were
at that time, the President of the United States, Harry S. Truman, issued an order that scared the hell out of a lot of people. He gave the military, the Air Force, the wherewithal to go shoot one or more of these things down. And there were people that were terrified that this, in fact, would create a genuine, true War of the Worlds.
Exactly.
Later, that was rescinded, but incidents did happen.
We were still at war in Korea when this happened.
Yes.
We were still fighting in Korea when this happened.
Yeah. I mean, the Billy Mitchell flight was to let Japan know we can touch you.
Exactly.
And it's exact same kind of psychology we're talking about here.
Well, recently the Israeli Air Force flew over Beirut, making all the sonic booms they could. They were rattling all the windows, whatever windows survive in Beirut. They were sending them a message. You really want to
Genghis Khan wants to know, John, basically what you're saying is the Roswell incident was a shoot down, not a lightning
It was a
accident
shoot down.
during a thunder.
It was a shoot down. It was not a crash. It was not a lightning, bad
And you
weather.
think it was a P-61 again?
P-61 Black Widow. I built one when I was a kid. They were really cool looking
they're amazing
aircraft.
planes.
They're amazing, and they painted them glossy black because they discovered from experiments that was the best way for a night fighter to hide in the sky if you had searchlights, because the searchlights would shine on the craft, looking for them, and they wouldn't show up. It was better than like flat black. Glossy black, just like the Black Widow Spider, is the best color. Now,
absolutely.
This continued on, by the way. There was the Lovett case, Sergeant Jonathan Lovett at White Sands. I believe it was in 1956. Abducted in broad daylight and mutilated, just like a cow.
Jesus.
They charged the major he was with murder, but they concluded that, the major didn't have anything to do with it. At just about the same time in Russia, 9 hikers out in the snow, they were snow hikers, were found massacred and mutilated. The Russians were apparently doing the same thing we were doing. If anything, if you're a Russian after World War II and you spot an unidentified aircraft, your first assumption is either American or British. So you scramble the MiGs, and they finally brought one down near one of their classified sites, kind of their, Site 51, you could call it, or White Sands. And the KGB troops arrived. They pried open the hatch on it with a crowbar, and they looked inside. Near Amerikinsky. These are not Americans. They were Greys. So just kind of set the tone. Now, according to Corso and according to Star Trek, you all remember the Corbomite maneuver?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
The United States, by the time of about 1966, had finally accumulated enough nuclear weapons that we could turn this entire planet into a frozen radioactive desert.
Yep.
It's like wiring your house with dynamite if you think the bank's going to try and foreclose on it. Go ahead. So
what is that? Mutual self-destruction.
Mutual self-destruction. Well, it's the Corbomite maneuver.
Yeah.
We'll take as many of you with us as we can. We'll be destroyed, but as Captain Kirk said, life, who wants to surrender to the Greys? I mean, my God. So basically, I tried to trace a kind of secret history of the UFO cover-up following that. But, the best data, the place where I spent the most time was the early 50s. And by the way, in 1951, 2 science fiction movies came out. One was The Day the Earth Stood Still. Very human alien gets out of a spaceship. He lands in Washington, D.C. It's a year before, by the way, the UFO cover-up, the UFOs overfly D.C. That movie, he literally lands on the White House lawn. And he wants the human race to give up its nuclear weapons. The same 4 months later, another movie came out called The Thing from Another World, with James Arness playing the alien. They had human mutilations, animal mutilations, and the fact that the alien liked human blood in that. The humans liked the draining of the blood from the victims. Believe it or not, started with the original War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
Yeah, the blood vines, the Martian blood vines.
But actually, in the original book, the aliens, the Martians, were capturing people and draining them of blood as sustenance. That's one of the reasons they got sick so quick. And this was in the, I mean, when the book War of the Worlds came out in 1900, basically, they had discovered what they thought were canals on Mars. They built the Suez Canal, by the way, and they were working on the Panama Canal when they discovered this canals on Mars thing. And Tsiolkovsky, the Russian, had figured out the mathematics for the rocket equation. So we knew we could travel in outer space theoretically with rockets. And so H.G. Wells put that all together as a member of the British Society, just coming out of the Victorian era, and wrote this just horrific novel depicting London being leveled, just like after the firebombing of Dresden. You see scenes of destruction and mass death in the War of the Worlds book that you didn't see till World War II. You see the aliens using not only directed energy weapons, heat rays, but poison gas on people, draining them of blood for sustenance. I mean, he was highly criticized by a lot of people for horrifying the audience, but everybody read it. And everybody thought about it. Those scenes of mass destruction and mass death were not seen in real life until World War II. So, science
Well,
fiction.
they did have some previews in World War One.
Oh, absolutely. The poison gas. Yes, the poison gas and the flamethrower. Instead of the heat ray, they had the flamethrower.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Germans invented the flamethrower and poison gas. God bless them. I'm so glad my family got kicked out of Germany back in 1750 before the trouble really started. We got kicked out of Germany because we wouldn't take off our hats for somebody. That's all it took. So I tracked. There's several ways you can track the UFO cover-up. One is you watch the Hollywood movies. They lag about a couple of years after major events behind the scenes, because Hollywood, and ever since World War II, Hollywood and Washington, D.C. are connected by a big underground fiber optic cable. And here's an interesting thing. In the late 60s, according to John Lear, but now backed up by several other people, we were losing in Vietnam because we weren't losing militarily, Don, but we were losing public support for the war. And so they decided to, since we were doing poorly in the Cold War on Earth, they decided to try and stabilize the front on the Cold War with the Greys, who are a main hostile entity out there. And supposedly they began negotiations with them and had a meeting at Holloman Air Force Base in about 1966, 67. And this resulted in kind of cosmic detente with the Greys. And shortly thereafter, Project Blue Book went out of business. Talk about gaslighting. They turned off the gaslight. If you saw a UFO, now you couldn't call anybody. You used to be able to call.
That's what happens to a bad television show.
That's what happens to a bad television show. And so not only that, they came out with the Condon report saying these aren't the droids you're looking for. They can go about their business. Now, this was celebrated. This secret treaty was apparently celebrated by the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 75. That came out later, Spielberg. And of course, you know what a happy little blue unicorns and rainbows celebration that was at the end when we finally have the Greys on the ground. We're talking to them. But supposedly part of that treaty was they could abduct people on lists, and they would give us all this good technology, like anti-gravity and synthetic food and death ray. It is the Cold War. But then by the late 70s, apparently that had all gone south. They were abducting far more people than they claimed. Some of the people were being abducted and never returned alive. They'd established joint bases, apparently, in one place called Dulce in New Mexico, where they were doing technology transfer. But they had a bunch of human captives there. And apparently, according to multiple sources I talked to, the special forces decided they'd had enough. They decided to run a rescue mission to try and free the human captives there. And this resulted in a big firefight under Archuleta Mesa at Dulce, New Mexico. Jimmy Carter was president by that time. He's sitting in his Oval Office. He knows there's a UFO cover-up, but no one will tell him anything. He realizes he's captain of a ship, and he doesn't have any idea what's going on below decks on this big ship. Suddenly, a bunch of high-ranking military people and intel officials arrive at their Oval Office. They say, Mr. President, we have to talk to you. This is late 1978, reportedly. He says, sure. What is it? And they say, well, the aliens that we had a secret treaty with that we didn't tell you about, we just had a nasty firefight with them at one of the joint bases we have. And he said, could you tell me that again? So he got briefed in about 45 minutes as to how far things had gone. Some reports say he broke down in tears at the hearing all of this, but he was very religious, and he was a former submariner, he was a military veteran, and he basically reinstituted shoot on sight with the Greys.
Now, this was the story that was purported by Paul Benowitz, right?
Yeah, but the thing was, I heard it from John Lear, and I checked it out with Leonard Stringfield. And Don, you remember him.
Oh, yeah.
He was a solid guy.
I got to tell you, when it emanated from Paul Benowitz to John Lear, all right,
yeah,
and then Lear disseminated it to the world, basically at large, via originally the Paranet BBS system.
Sure.
I jumped into that. I put on my detective hat, and I jumped into that deep. All right.
Sure.
Later, with William Moore, who was part and parcel of the AFOSI operation mounted against Benowitz.
PsyOps.
Point man running was Rick Doty from AFOSI. Okay. Benowitz was deliberately deceived.
I know.
Propagandized, brainwashed, if you will, to the
Oh,
point
they put
where
LSD
he ended up in a mental hospital.
Yes.
And all that crap about Dulce and everything else that Lear disseminated was from Benowitz. And John, my bottom line, I'm not telling anybody what to think, but I think it's horse shit.
Well,
I talked to Leonard.
Hey, I knew Leonard, and Leonard did some damn good work, but we've all been fooled at one point or another.
Right, but what are we supposed to believe about somebody like Lear who told us on the air there's 50 million people who are living on the moon?
Yeah.
And then when we ask for any proof, he says, you'll just have to believe me.
Right. Yeah. He did. Yes, he did.
So do you think?
So I don't know. Hey, obviously,
Lear was good friends
none of us
with
were
Jimmy
there.
Doolittle.
Jimmy Doolittle.
No,
none of us were there.
I wasn't there. Now, well, I talked to Leonard Stringfield about 3 times about this. He was my source. He was my go-to guy. And he said he'd heard about 3 different versions of the incident. And the only basic difference between the accounts was the body count. He said there was a military clash. And he says, as typical of military clashes, hardly really understands what happened afterwards. It was and
Well, I've got no heartburn at all.
Here's what Holly
with a military clash. I got no heartburn with that. I believe.
I mean, I remember
that's
sitting
very possible.
Yeah, and I didn't believe in UFOs at the time because I was a graduate student and I was told not to believe in UFOs if I wanted to get out of graduate school and get my doctoral thesis. Yes, sir. Please sign my thesis so I can get a real job and get out of here and buy my wife. And, absolutely.
So this Jimmy Carter thing.
So,
how
but
does
here's
this...
Go.
So,
okay, one last thing. I'll just say, as near as I could check out, this sounded like a military clash where a lot of the witnesses are dead. A lot of people got killed. The government had gone, had entered into an agreement with somebody that had complete contempt for human values. And the fact that they told Benowitz this to help drive him insane doesn't surprise me.
Well, I heard
because I used to drive by Benowitz's.
I heard one story which was a variation of the Archuleta Mesa story, where the American military forces in this joint UFO or ET human, bunker, whatever the hell they were doing down there, that some soldiers came into the area where the ETs were with loaded weapons, loaded firearms, rifles, pistols with live ammunition. And the aliens, this is what I was told, and I'm just relaying it. I don't believe it necessarily, but that whatever the aliens were doing would have an adverse reaction to live ammunition. Now, don't ask me how, why, where, who knows? But the military personnel refused to disarm, and that's what caused the altercation. Now, like I said, it's another variation on the story.
It's another variation on the story.
So how does this Jimmy Carter thing line up where in this story, in this version, they basically spill their guts to him, where we continually hear that the president is not in a need to know. So why the hell would they tell him anything?
Because suddenly he needed to know.
So so we have these other instances, be it Roswell and others, where they didn't have a need to know. So what made this a need to know and the other ones didn't?
Not initially, Mark.
Truman knew all about Roswell.
Truman knew about it. Eisenhower knew about it. And by extension, Richard Nixon knew about it.
Yeah.
Because
Johnson wouldn't have known about it.
Nixon was Eisenhower's VP. And later, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Now, it wasn't really until after Nixon resigned, Jerry Ford, for 2 years, took over the presidency. He was not in the loop. No. And then, of course, Jimmy Carter. Now, Carter, what made Carter somewhat unique is the fact that when he was running for governor, he had a UFO experience
Right.
that he reported,
Right.
incidentally, to MUFON. MUFON has records of that.
So what confirmation do we have that the other presidents knew that they were ET issues? I mean, real confirmation.
Well, one was George
Mark
W. Bush Sr. George Bush. Now, how would he have known? Because at the time, in the mid-70s, he was the CIA director.
Right.
He would have been in on the know.
Well, no. I guess what I'm asking for is John's got this very interesting story backed up by other people that they spilled their guts to the president. Okay, that's great. I'm fine with that. So if other presidents also had the guts spilled to them about it, do we have similar confirmed stories of how the guts were spilled to them?
I have no idea.
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
And I speak to it in the book. The next president was Ronald Reagan. He had been governor of California for 2 terms.
Right.
And he was a buddy with Edward Teller, who ran Lawrence Livermore Lab, where I was going to graduate school. I had met Edward Teller several times and talked with him. I have the honor to report. And so he was advising Ronald Reagan. And of course, Edward Teller knew all about this. That was the genesis of the Star Wars program, was a space defense program. And of course, you remember that Ronald Reagan basically said, gee, I've often wondered what we would do if we were threatened with an invasion from outer space. Wouldn't we end the Cold War? And
5 public appearances he used that.
5 public appearances he said that. The first 2 times he said it, I just thought, well, this is Ronnie. I mean, he was the governor of California when I was there, and the 3rd time he said it, I thought, no, he means it. The 4th and the 5th time, I thought, he's trying to bring us up to speed just in case in case things go south.
Including at the UN.
Yep.
He gave that speech at the United Nations.
And okay, so Mark, Jerry, why did the Cold War collapse so quickly? One week we're bitter enemies. The next, there's one scene I remember. It just stuck with me, stuck in my mind. It's one of our admirals. He's sitting on the deck of one of our aircraft carriers. They're watching an overflight of all of our naval aviation, fighter bombers, intruders, all this stuff, going by in a big parade in the sky. Sitting next to him is the Soviet defense minister, Akramerov. I mean, this guy was a tough guy. He was a tank commander in World War II. He's wearing dark glasses. He's grinning ear to ear, watching all of this American military stuff. These guys are acting like best buddies and comrades in arms. That was about 1988, 87, when the Cold War really was pretty much winding down into nothing. You remember, it ended with amazing suddenness. Suddenly, we were good buddies. We became military allies.
Tear down that wall.
Tear down that wall, and well, communism couldn't survive the end of the Cold War.
Well, I got a story
about
that period of time. But
yeah,
being the good host I am, I just looked at my clock.
Uh-oh.
And we've only got about a minute and a half, which is not enough time to tell that story. So I'm going to have to.
I got a quick one. Okay, what was the response after the Dulce battle? The movie Alien, which was about human betrayal.
Well, John, you
movie
got about a
Alien.
minute. Tell everybody where they can get your book.
Yeah, it's on Amazon.com, and you get a print version or a Kindle version.
It is.
Read
I just ordered one while we were on the air for my buddy in Florida, and I'm having it shipped to him. So there you go.
Okay, our future will look like Star Trek because the Pleiadians are going to help us. Not that I trust them completely either. They look too
Providing
much
we
like
don't
us
get
for me
hit,
to trust them.
providing we don't get hit by an asteroid in the Taurid meteor stream.
Yeah, well,
Which,
you won't know
by
about
the
it.
way, has happened before. Guys, that's it.
That
for this week.
would be too simple. That would be too simple, Don.
Exactly. That's it for this week. John, I want to thank you
Thanks,
once
John.
again.
Pleasure and an
Hopefully,
honor, you guys, to be.
Many more appearances by you, my friend. Gary,
Absolutely.
Mark, as always, great show, fellas. And I got to give a special thank you to our producer, Ms. Chanel, who every week does one bang up job, 5 stars. That's it for this week,
Gary.
ladies and gentlemen. Remember, Thursday, UAP Crossfire, beginning at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 Eastern. We'll see you when we see you.
God
Good
bless
night.
Sam and Dean Winchester.
Live long and prosper.